A wall of water, the looming threat over China. The air was thick, humid, and heavy with the weight of a storm that refused to end. In the lowlands of central China, the skies had turned a murky gray, blending with the rising waters that surged through valleys, past villages, and around homes now half submerged. What began as days of persistent rainfall had become something far more ominous. Floodwaters were not just creeping, they were racing, devouring fields, lifting cars, and toppling electrical poles. The rivers were no longer rivers, they had become furious beasts, and something larger loomed in their path, the containment dams. These dams, towering and vast, were constructed to withstand almost anything. But no structure is eternal. Water pressed against their walls with growing urgency, shaking the concrete, testing every joint, crack, and seam. Nearby towns listened to the sounds echoing through the ground, deep, low rumbles that felt unnatural. The flood control systems, built to protect millions, were groaning under a pressure they were never meant to carry for so long. Water levels rose by the hour, and the emergency sirens began to sound. In farming communities nestled near the reservoirs, families were hastily packing what little they could: clothes, documents, dry food. Elderly residents were carried out on stretchers and carts, while young children clung to their parents. Evacuation orders came not as announcements, but as frantic calls between neighbors. Roads leading to higher ground became choked with people on motorbikes, bicycles, and foot. There was no time for hesitation. Behind them, water surged forward, swallowing entire crops, turning once lush green land into a brown, churning sea. Elsewhere, rescue teams in orange suits moved through the murky waters on inflatable boats. They shouted through megaphones, trying to locate anyone trapped in flooded homes. Some houses had already been reduced to rooftops, with residents waving frantically for help. Time was running thin. The rescue efforts were heroic, but limited. For every boat dispatched, dozens still waited for a miracle. Meanwhile, rain continued to fall, not as a light drizzle, but as thick sheets, relentless and stinging. Lightning cracked the sky in violent bursts, illuminating scenes of devastation for brief moments before plunging everything back into darkness. The wind howled as if warning of something greater to come. Reports whispered of saturation points being exceeded. The reservoir banks were at maximum capacity. Spillways had been opened, but the release only offered temporary relief. In some areas, makeshift channels were dug overnight to divert water into open plains. But the soil, long soaked and weakened, could no longer absorb the pressure. Mudslides began to occur on nearby hills, blocking highways and damaging transmission lines. Entire areas were left without power, and still the water climbed. There was a silence among officials, a tense pause that spoke louder than any press conference. Behind closed doors, decisions were being weighed, critical, irreversible choices, whether to release more water in a controlled discharge or risk a catastrophic breach. It was a nightmare scenario. Saving one region might mean flooding another. Every move had consequences. Downriver, cities braced for the worst. Emergency shelters were set up in gymnasiums, schools, and abandoned warehouses. Volunteers worked day and night to set up cots, distribute bottled water, and comfort the elderly and frightened. Children, who, bewildered by the chaos, tried to play quietly in corners. The anxiety was palpable, but the unity was stronger. In the face of disaster, people stood together. Drone footage captured images of submerged bridges, fractured roads, and entire suburbs hidden beneath the rising tide. Villagers were seen forming human chains to pass sandbags, trying to protect what little was left of their communities. In the distance, sirens echoed off the mountains, signaling yet another area had been overtaken by floodwaters. Yet, amid the despair, there was resilience. Firefighters, soaked and exhausted, carried people from waist-deep water to safety. Nurses treated injuries in makeshift clinics under tarps. Farmers guided their livestock to higher ground, refusing to leave their animals behind. Across social platforms, people shared updates, coordinates, and offers of help. The storm had not broken their spirits, but tension continued to build around the dams. Specialists monitored pressure gauges, watched for cracks, and kept in constant contact with emergency command centers. Helicopters flew overhead, scouting for breaches or signs of structural failure. The entire region held its breath. It was no longer just about flooding. It was about what would happen if the dams gave way. The scenarios played out in engineers' minds like disaster simulations. Walls of water, unstoppable, rushing down valleys at breakneck speeds, swallowing entire towns. The clock ticked down and all eyes remained fixed on the walls that held everything back. As night fell, the rain did not let up. Instead, it intensified. Some called it a deluge unlike anything in memory. In one province, the river broke through a barrier, sweeping away everything in its path. In another, families climbed to rooftops, lighting fires or waving cloths in the hope someone would see them. For those trapped, the hours dragged like eternity. But even in the darkest hour, hope lingered. The human spirit refused to break. With every passing minute, more volunteers arrived, more supplies were airdropped, more people found refuge on higher ground. Rescue teams continued their search, even in the dead of night, even under pouring rain. The fight was not over. Not yet. The flood may have claimed land, homes, and lives, but it had not claimed the will of the people. Together, they waited, prayed, and prepared. The threat of a dam breach still loomed like a shadow over everything, but until the final moment, they would not give in. The storm could rage, the rivers could rise, but the hearts of those who remained would not be washed away.